Breaking news this Wednesday night. The Montreal girl missing for 4 days is found alive.
It's the best scenario possible.
Where she was discovered and what police are revealing. Fresh bombardments between Israel and Iran. The U.S. president's cryptic messages.
I mean, nobody knows what I'm going to do.
And what the end game really is. Ottawa's contentious Bill C-5, how it will accelerate approval of big projects in this country. Plus, putting the oil in Royal.
Definitely sucks, you know.
What another difficult dose of deja vu for the Oilers means for Captain Connor McDavid.
You know, get trying the same thing over and over and just banging our heads against the wall.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. There is no let-up in the attacks and the rhetoric flying between Israel and Iran tonight. Israel was first to launch preemptive strikes on Iran's nuclear sites 5 days ago, killing nuclear scientists and senior military leaders. Israel claims Iran is close to building a nuclear weapon, but no hard evidence of that has emerged. Still, the American president says he's considering joining the Israeli bombing campaign.
I'm not looking to fight, but if it's a choice between fighting and them having a nuclear weapon, you have to do what you have to do. Maybe we won't have to fight.
Trump claims Iranian negotiators want to visit the White House. This was the response from Iran's diplomatic mission to the UN. No Iranian official has ever asked to grovel at the gates of the White House. An Iran supreme leader has rejected Trump's demand for an unconditional surrender, warning any U.S. military involvement would cause irreparable damage. Mike Armstrong is following developments from Jerusalem. Mike.
Well, Donna, the volleys back and forth between these two countries continue. There was already a missile alert here in Israel tonight. But it's hard not to notice how the two countries seem to be headed in different directions. One is trying to return to life as normal. The other seems to be getting further and further from it. There were explosions in the eastern part of the Iranian capital Wednesday. Well, less and less information is coming out of Iran as the government tightens communications. In a country where there were already considerable restrictions on internet and cell service, it's gotten worse. Even communications platforms like WhatsApp have gone dark. Well, Tehran's police department is sharing this video. It says security forces seized a truck carrying drones and components used in Israeli attacks. Authorities also claim to have uncovered a workshop in Iran used by Israeli spies assembling drones and explosives. The Israeli Prime Minister is telling his citizens its military controls the skies over Tehran. There have been painful losses, but he says the home front is strong. Well, some citizens are coming home. When Israel's airspace was closed to civilian flights Friday, thousands were stranded in Cyprus. Wednesday, the national carrier El Al flew more than a dozen emergency flights to Tel Aviv and Haifa, bringing back about 1,000 people. There are plans for more flights in the coming days from several European cities.
Even with the dangers and the missiles, I feel safer here.
Israeli officials say they're also making plans to ease security restrictions and gradually reopen the economy. Some regions will see more businesses and even schools reopen in the coming days. That said, many are still spending nights in shelters and safe rooms.
It's sad and it's scary. My entire family is from Tel Aviv, so we have nowhere to go.
There you go. This is video shot by a Canadian hockey player on an Israeli team during an alert. Timothy Payne has for 3 days been in and out of shelters and says even locals more accustomed to conflict than him at times panic.
This is more serious than anything they've dealt with before. It's not Hamas, it's Iran.
Now, there were nationals from around the world stranded in Israel who've now made it out on a cruise ship. They were among 1,500 people here as part of a Jewish heritage program. That ship arrived in Cyprus Wednesday. There were Canadians on board, including a group out of Montreal. Donna?
All right, Mike Armstrong, thank you. The U.S. president holds the cards on what happens next. When he was elected, he promised to be a peacemaker president. But Israel relies on American weaponry and support. And today, Donald Trump said he hasn't made a final decision on whether to get involved. Jackson Prosco explains what the president is weighing.
As President Donald Trump continued to remake the White House,
installing 2 oversized flags, he played coy about whether he'll upend his America First image and go to war with Iran.
I mean, nobody knows what I'm going to do. I can tell you this, that Iran's got a lot of trouble, and they want to negotiate.
Trump claimed the Iranians have offered to come to Washington to talk, but says it's too late.
The next week is going to be very big, maybe less than a week, maybe less.
Then he doubled down on his calls for Iran's immediate surrender.
It's a very simple, unconditional surrender. That means I've had it. Okay, I've had it, I give up, no more. Then we go blow up all the, all the nuclear stuff.
Preparations are underway for possible U.S. involvement, with the Pentagon moving fighter jets and a 3rd aircraft carrier into the region.
Are we opening up the possibility of another 911, for example, by doing an attack? I think all those things have to be thought through very carefully.
The calculation is complicated, not just because of concern for further regional escalation or the risk of direct retaliation against the U.S., but because Trump's own director of national intelligence has stated Iran is not, in fact, a nuclear threat.
The IC continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon.
Trump has said he doesn't care what his advisors think and believes Iran is on the cusp.
I only want one thing. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. That's it.
At this late hour, on the brink of a wider conflict, Trump says he's talking to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu daily. He says he has urged Israel to keep going with its campaign and referred to Iran's leadership as hostile zealots. Donna?
All right, Jackson, thanks. Russia's foreign minister has warned the U.S. that direct military assistance to Israel could radically destabilize the Middle East and widen the conflict. The confrontation between Iran and Israel is escalating fast, but it has been years in the making. And as Eric Sorensen reports, though Israel's prime minister is targeting Iran's nuclear program, Benjamin Netanyahu's real endgame is regime change.
Israeli attacks have demonstrated not only Israel's military might, but Iran's vulnerability. Satellite pictures show before and after of Iranian military, missile, and nuclear sites. Is regime change next?
Or are you going to target the supreme leader?
Look, we're doing what we need to do. I'm not going to get into the details.
Just days ago, President Trump did not want Israel to launch a massive military campaign. Now,
there's a big difference between now and a week ago, right? Big difference.
Israel's stated goal is to eliminate Iran's nuclear program. IAEA inspectors have found no proof of nuclear weapons development, but also declared last week Iran is not in compliance with its non-proliferation obligations. Iran's Fordo uranium enrichment facility is deep inside a mountain. Its destruction would require massive penetrating bombs that only the U.S. military can deliver with its stealth B-2 bombers. And that would draw the U.S. directly into the war.
The U.S. has capabilities that the Israelis don't, as good as the Israelis are. So that's the range of what we understand President Trump has asked his cabinet secretaries to pull together.
While Israel's attacks have diminished Iran's ability to defend itself and strike back long distance, Iran still has thousands of shorter-range missiles that can reach Arab Gulf states, including Qatar and others where U.S. military bases are located.
If they can't effectively counterattack against the Israelis, then there'll be a growing temptation to use their shorter-range missiles against targets in the Gulf, i.e. U.S. bases.
This would regionalize the war. This is part of the reason why many of these Arab countries are dead set against this escalation.
And as the U.S. war in Iraq demonstrated, taking out the regime could bring long-term instability to the entire region.
Regime change, you're changing the regime from one thing to another. Regime collapse means that you just take out the state apparatus, create chaos, and let the chaos fester.
Israel's attack has sent Iran reeling and put the Middle East on edge. But rather than negotiate, the U.S. president is considering joining in. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
There's breaking news out of Quebec. A missing 3-year-old girl has been found alive. Police found her in eastern Ontario. Dan Spector is following this story for us. Dan, how did they find her and how is she?
Donna, almost 72 hours after she first went missing, Claire Bell has been found a province away, alive and safe. Now police are among those celebrating the good news after 3 days of uncertainty. Bell was spotted alone on the side of a highway in eastern Ontario by an Ontario Provincial Police drone, about 100 kilometers west of where police began their search in Quebec. Officers say she was conscious when she was taken into the hands of paramedics and sent to a hospital nearby. Authorities in Ontario got involved today after police spoke to a witness who said she had seen Claire and her mother Rachel Todd on Sunday afternoon. This is the fourth day more than 150 police resources have been searching this area west of Montreal for the little girl.
She was speaking with the police officer. She was alive. We provided some first aid in water and food for now, and she's been taken care of by the paramedics. So the priority is just to make sure she is okay.
There are feelings of jubilation now for sure, but of course many more questions have now emerged. The main one, how does a 3-year-old girl end up all by herself on the side of the highway? Was she out there by herself without food and water for the past several days? Her mother, Rachel Todd, had another court appearance today where she is charged with child abandonment. She has another court appearance coming up this Friday and remains detained. But for now, a major sense of euphoria has struck this whole area as the best possible scenario has unfolded. Donna.
Good news. Dan Spector in Coteau-du-Lac, Quebec. Thank you. The federal government is being urged to rethink a sweeping piece of legislation it is fast-tracking. Bill C-5 is expected to pass through Parliament before it breaks for the summer on Friday. Critics say it will allow the government to steamroll over environmental protections and Indigenous rights. As Mackenzie Gray reports, the bill's backers believe it will streamline the approvals process, and that is the only way to get major infrastructure projects built.
It was a core campaign promise.
We will need to do things previously thought impossible at speeds we haven't seen in generations.
And to do that, Mark Carney is fast-tracking legislation that the Liberals say will help get big projects built.
Canadians have entrusted us to do things differently.
Bill C-5 would allow Cabinet to designate things like ports, pipelines and railways as national projects of interest, changing the thinking around the federal permitting process.
It's about transitioning from should we build to how do we build.
The project's proponent would then work with a singular, yet-to-be-established government office to help them meet all the federal rules and get the approval or denial within 2 years. If there are issues with those permits, the bill grants the federal cabinet extraordinary powers to exempt any project from any federal law they choose, a section dubbed the Henry VIII Clause by academics.
The idea that the executive branch could, with a stroke of a pen, eliminate the application of laws that were passed and debated in Parliament, I think that's really problematic.
A view shared by even some Liberals.
It would all actually make Harper blush. Liberals would rightly scream, that we would scream if a federal Conservative government attempted the same.
The actions that they're taking today.
Indigenous groups also concerned about the government's commitment to meaningful consultation.
Not only does this not live up to Canada's obligation to respect rights, it creates the possibility of national interest projects ending up before the courts.
Despite the criticism, the Liberals say they won't change the bill.
The legislation is about supporting projects that are not only shovel-ready, but shovel-worthy. Projects that respect Indigenous knowledge and uphold Aboriginal and treaty rights.
The House of Commons will continue to sit until midnight to help the Liberals, with the support of the Conservatives, Donna, to ram the bill through Parliament, with it expected to become law on Friday after only a week of debate.
Okay, Mackenzie Gray in Ottawa, thanks. Hitting the reset button. Coming up, as Canada looks to repair its relationship with India, why CSIS is sounding the alarm. Canada's spy agency issued a new warning today about foreign governments, including India, Iran, China, Russia and Pakistan, using organized crime groups to target political opponents in this country. Just yesterday, Prime Minister Mark Carney welcomed Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the G7 summit and announced the two countries are restoring full diplomatic ties. Carney revealed the two leaders discussed transnational repression, but as Taria Isri reports, he had little more to say.
It's a great honor to host you.
The federal government may be trying to turn the page on this relationship reset. But the potential threats India poses to Canada are spelled out here in black and white.
Through proxies, in this case the Bolshoi gang, they created basically a crime wave across Canada.
Canada's intelligence agency warns foreign governments like India are behind a concerning trend of states leveraging organized crime networks to conduct threat activity, including transnational repression of legitimate speech. The report also states New Delhi's alleged role in the murder of Sikh activist Hardeep Singh Nijjar signals a significant escalation.
Yes or no, did you bring up the murder?
I refer to my previous answer.
Prime Minister Mark Carney dodged the question, saying only they discussed law enforcement cooperation.
It just comes off as appeasement, and it really puts our community in the target.
At the G7, Canada and India agreed to reappoint high commissioners and restore diplomatic services.
It is the fastest growing major economy, and it is the world's most populous state.
I think it was necessary and successful.
Necessary, it appears, as Canada looks to India as one of its options for reducing reliance on the U.S.
We're not even the middle power we used to be, so we're at a bit of a disadvantage. So it is necessary to yield a bit.
Canada took a different position on India under Justin Trudeau. But the country is in a different economic position today. And some international relations experts say Canada needs more partners, even if they're imperfect. Donna?
Taria Isri in Montreal, thanks. The sole survivor of last week's Air India plane crash went to his own brother's funeral today. Vishwash Kumar Ramesh helped carry his brother's coffin. They were on the plane that crashed seconds after takeoff last week. Of the 242 people on board, only Ramesh survived. The cause of that crash is still not known. Ahead, why the G7 summit did not deliver on the climate crisis. The G7 summit in Kananaskis showcased a part of Canada famous for its natural beauty, but glaciers in the Rockies are melting at an alarming rate and wildfires are intensifying. How to respond to wildfires was on the agenda at the G7, but there was no significant talk about the climate crisis. Heather Urix-West explains why that is seen as an opportunity missed.
Colleen Chalafu creates beautiful floral arrangements for Rocky Mountain weddings. But Canmore, a community near the site of this year's G7 summit, isn't quite home.
I've been in Jasper for almost 20 years. It's where I raised my family.
Last summer, wildfire burned a path of destruction through Jasper. More than a third of the town's homes and businesses were lost. Nearly a year later, Chalafu continues to grieve.
I have a deep belonging to that community. Yes. So it's devastating.
A year out, it's not getting any easier.
No.
The impact of climate change here is impossible to deny. These beautiful glacier-filled Rockies are rapidly drying out.
It's ironic that the G7 is meeting at one of the Global Water Futures Observatory's research sites.
John Pomeroy has been studying the impact of climate change on these mountains for decades, but the glacier melt has intensified in the last few years. It's why he's so frustrated that world leaders are gathering here, but not discussing ways to tackle the crisis.
There's a collective delusion in the G7 leaders that they're not addressing these issues, and future generations will condemn them most certainly for this.
What has been discussed at this summit is the need for a more coordinated wildfire response, a topic environmental groups say is short-sighted if countries aren't dealing with the problem's root cause.
Leading up to this event, there hasn't really been a whole lot of conversation about what is one of the most challenging situations that the planet is facing.
A second Trump presidency and exploding global conflicts have seemingly pushed climate change issues off the map. But for those watching their communities change before their eyes,
it's alarming and it's heartbreaking. All of it is very, very difficult.
It's a topic impossible to ignore. Heather Urix-West, Global News, Banff, Alberta.
Next, how the Oilers and their fans are feeling after another Stanley Cup heartbreak. The The Stanley Cup is staying put for another year. The Florida Panthers were relentless last night, winning hockey's biggest prize for the second year in a row. A Canadian team hasn't won the Cup now in 32 years, although small consolation, there are 8 Canadians on the Panthers, and the Edmonton Oilers did make the finals in back-to-back years, but losing both times hurts. Jasmine King is in Edmonton.
Well, the mood is certainly somber in Edmonton today as fans are reflecting on what could have happened, seeing the Stanley Cup return to the city. Of course, a day later, fans are just hoping to see some better luck next year, and they're really wishing for and thinking of what they might want to see happen for the Oilers next season.
Well, we have the players, you know what I mean? We have the goalie. It's just, like I said, sometimes, injuries during the season can occur in playoffs, and that's just the way it is.
Well, as the fans start to think about what the next season might look like, we're also hearing some of that from the club. Of course, last night players expressed their frustration with the second straight loss to the Florida Panthers. Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl just showing some of their emotion on what they wish would have happened and what they're hoping to maybe see as they come next year, just really reflecting on the season that was. And there's, of course, a lot of question marks as we head into the offseason of what the future of the Edmonton Oilers may look like.
Never really able to generate any momentum up the ice. We kept trying the same thing over and over again, just banging our heads against the wall.
Although there are many sad fans in Edmonton today, overall they are proud of the team, of course, for making the Stanley Cup final once again. They're hoping for a similar result next year, but it might be too early to say what could happen there, but fans are really hoping for a great off-season and, again, great season next year. Donna?
There is always hope. Jasmine King in Edmonton, thanks. That is Global National for this Wednesday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is something special. These young drummers from the Squamish Nation sang a traditional grizzly bear song on Grouse Mountain in North Vancouver, and it seemed to catch the ears of Grinder and Kula, the 2 grizzlies who live in an enclosure up there. Thanks for watching and hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.